From the early 1900s until the mid-1960s, this farm grew potatoes. This was a small family farm in Dagle, Maine, that had been planted for potatoes from the early 1900s. The small family farmer then sold the land because of health issues, and the land stayed fallow for many years. The property had been growing up in all kinds of brush, red osier dogwood, aspen. The ground was going back to nature until 1982, when it was planted in red pine. The red pine then grew for 40 years. And in 2015, the disease then hit the trees, and the plantation began to die. The red pines, now 35 feet tall and 12 to 20 inches on the stump, were slowly dying. This is a remnant of one of those trees that remained standing. The trees started to die from the bottom branches, and all the new growth started to die. And each year, the death was going up and up the tree, till there was nothing left except the bare skeleton of a tree. In 2018, the red pines were all harvested. A market had opened, and the trees were all cut down and brought in to a mill to be made into lumber. The year after the harvest, a lot of new growth started to sprout throughout the area, especially with the death of the red pines, letting more sunlight come into the base of the trees and the surrounding landscape, and soon a lot of vegetation was growing. In 2019, the area was replanted with the help of the Irving Corporation, and was planted with red spruce. The red spruce is less susceptible to the spruce budworm. The new seedlings started to grow right away, and by 2020, some had grown buds, but the increasing competition from the surrounding trees really hampered the growth of the trees. The surrounding vegetation around the young seedlings stopped the growth. In the fall of 2020, the decision was made to apply a herbicide treatment to slow down and actually kill the new growth of the competing vegetation to allow the young seedlings to grow. The application of the herbicide was done in early September, when the spruce trees had stopped growing, but the competing hardwoods, the aspen, the red osier, the popples, still were growing, absorbing the treatment chemicals into their roots. In the spring of 2021, we can see where the area has been herbicided and those areas which have not been herbicided. Now we can actually see the seedlings growing in, and of course the areas which have not been herbicided are still sheltering the red spruce seedlings. This is May 2021, and with the help of the Irving Corporation, we've gotten some seedlings to replace the ones that were actually killed by the drought or shaded out by the vegetation. These are seedlings of red spruce that have been provided by Irving to replace the ones that have not survived the vegetation and the drought of last summer. There are 72 seedlings in one of these trays. They were grown and now are replanted by Irving throughout the northern Maine area. The planting process, which is a manual one, starts by looking through the area to find out where the missing trees are located. In this case, we walked the entire property and then put these little flags where the trees that we've just received should be planted. Spacing between the trees is kept to 8 feet apart. One of the areas that we look for is a place where the original seedlings were planted, and because of the drought or the competition did not survive. Notice the flag is put next to this one, and a seedling will be planted here. Another thing that we pay attention to is if we notice any kind of spruce and fir that are already growing, that had regenerated over the years, and now we're starting to grow. The new seedlings are not planted next to these. Many of the seedlings that we had planted in 2019 are doing well. Now we're maintaining the spacing between these seedlings, trying to keep 8-foot distance between the existing seedlings and the new seedlings that we're going to plant. Now that we've identified where all the seedlings need to be planted, we then start the planting process and putting new seedlings where the flags are marked. We're planting the trees using a tool called the dibble bar. The dibble bar is about 3 feet long, has a cone on the end that will go into the ground, has a place to put your foot to push it into the ground with a handle on the end so that you can hold on to the bar as you press down with your foot. Now, this is how the dibble bar is held. One hand on the handle and 1 foot onto the bar that's going to push the cone into the ground. As you can see, there's a marker here by one that was planted in 2019 and has not survived. Now we're going to plant a seedling right next to it. The first step in planting is we need to get to the mineral soil. There are layers of needles, pine needles from previous years, and all kinds of vegetation. But we need to put that seedling in some mineral soil. The first thing to do is we use our heel and remove the sod and the debris that's on the soil, trying to get to the mineral soil. As you can see, we're going down at least 2 inches into the soil. Now we're down below the existing vegetation and old needles from previous years. We're now down to the bare soil. First thing is to put the cone right into the bare ground. In this case, as you can see, it's ready to go. The next step is to press down on that bar with your foot and push down until the end of the cone is into the soil. The first attempt could have hit a root and the cone would not go in. Now the ground has been scuffed off to the side, and now we'll try this process again, putting the cone on the soil, putting the foot down on the bar and pressing down. The second attempt also didn't succeed. There could be some roots there from the previous trees. Now we're trying a third spot a few inches away. As you can see, it's going down pretty well. Now the end of the cone is level with the ground. It won't go down any further. Now the bar is moved back and forth just to move away some of the soil to widen the hole just a bit. After several turns, the cone is pulled out of the ground. Now please note that the ground is now stuck, that was pushed into the cone, is now in the cone, and we're going to be using it later to bury the tree. This is the cone that was just pulled out, leaving a nice hole for the seedling to be planted in. The seedling is planted in the trays in some kind of soil mixture, allowing the seed to grow. As you can see, the seedling and the roots are probably about 14 inches in length. 4.5 to 5 inches are roots, and the rest of the seedling is what was grown in the nursery this past year. Now the root is going to be inserted into the cone. It will fall easily. It is not to be pushed into the ground. As you can see, it ends up being level, the root ball with the ground itself. After the seedling has been put into the soil, some of the soil is pulled from around the tree to fill in the hole, pressing down a little bit just to make sure that it's sealed. The cone on the dibble bar is full of soil. Now what we want to do is we take the soil that's in that cone and bring it back, take it out, and spread it out next to the root system. This is putting a little more soil around the seedling. This newly planted seedling will stay this way for this entire year, and then next year we'll start to put on growth, an inch at a time. In 5 years, this tree should be 4 feet tall, and in 40 years will be 40 feet tall. Although we'll never see this tree mature, it will give us pleasure for the next years watching it grow watching the birds come into the trees, into this plantation. The wildlife will return to the area, and someday this will be a nice stand of red spruce.